Welcome to the recording of 2022 Notes from the Field, Week 2 in the year we learned to listen to love. Now, you might have noticed that this recording is late. I'm Janet Connor, prayer artist, mystic witch, mistress of the threshold, producer and director in the Theater of the Miraculous, and this is Hilda Moore. Hilda Moore, a needle felt witch doll who is always with me, always prays with me, always reads these newsletters with me. She's always right here along with Joan on the altar, and she kind of barged in and wants to read these newsletters to you. So we are here, but it's January 17th, so I want to tell you why we're late. Because I did promise that I would record each Notes from the Field newsletter for you. They come out on Sunday, so my intention is to record it on a Monday or Tuesday so that you get it at least by Wednesday. Yeah, I think I'm over a week late, right? Let me tell you why. I think you could say I have a good excuse. I had to get through January 11th. If you have followed me for a while, if you've read my books, if you've ever been to a Writing Down Your Soul workshop or intensive, you know that January 11th is a very sacred anniversary. On January 11th, 2009, my first public talk about Writing Down Your Soul was at Wings Bookstore in St. Petersburg, Florida. The entire story is in the new edition introduction. I highly recommend you read it, but I don't want to keep you hanging. I want you to know why I wasn't here on the 11th to record this newsletter for you. On January 11th of 2009, there were 35 people in the room. They were all having coffee. They were holding signed copies of my book, except for one guy right there, smack in front of me, maybe 40 years old, black plastic glasses, blue jeans. And he listened very intently as I tried to explain what Writing Down Your Soul is. And when I finished, I thought I was hot stuff, right? You know, I had practiced, probably a month for this 20-minute talk. And he raised his hand, interrupted me, and said, I know what this is. Do you remember that feeling? Especially in your very first effort? Your very first talk, your very first book. You've worked up the courage to tell your story. And some stranger, some guy says, I know what this is. Well, he did. He said, this is romance. And I almost fell over. And I made him a promise. I actually touched his right arm, and I made him a promise I would always tell the story, and I have in every single Writing Down Your Soul workshop and intensive. I have told Archangel Michael story, and yes, I didn't know it at the time, but that was absolutely Archangel Michael. Who else would know that this is a romance? Writing Down Your Soul, we know, is a divination tool. It's magnificent. It awakens this extraordinary voice within, as the subtitle says, but it's more than that. It is an ecstatic, mystical, sacred marriage, love, relationship. It's a romance. So every year on the 11th, I spend the day in Deep Soul Writing. I say my gratitude to Michael. I reread now that I can reread my own introduction in Writing Down Your Soul. And I didn't come up here and record this newsletter for you. So here we are on January 17th, and I am finally reading you. Oh, I'm sorry. Hilda Moore is reading you. Week 2 in 2022, the year we learn to listen to love. In week 2, an ancient queen frees a modern woman's voice. Friends, soul writers, mystics, lovers of prayer, in last Sunday's week 1 of 2022, we began a 52-week-long walk to learn to listen to love. At the bottom of that first newsletter, I mentioned that the first intensive for 2022 is going to be called Free Your Voice. And I said I would open it for registration to my whole subscriber list today, January 9th, when I was writing this newsletter. But first, I needed to invite the members of the Return of the Witches pilgrimage from last summer and the Lotus and the Lily. Now, every January, I always give first dibbies to the first intensive for the year to the members of the Lotus and the Lily because it's just ending. But this year, I also needed to invite the members of the Return of the Witches pilgrimage, which was last summer, because they're the ones that gave birth to Free Your Voice. 85 of you were in that pilgrimage, and you might remember the moment that Free Your Voice was born. But many of you have found me after the pilgrimage ended, or you weren't in the pilgrimage, and so I want to tell you this wild, miraculous, fabulous story, and then invite you to hear the words of the beautiful young woman whose brave voice birthed this intensive. So here's what happened. There were 13 gatherings for 13 witches, all in very ceremonial space. There was no talking, no chat. Week after week, Saturday after Saturday, we stepped into the time and the place where a woman was labeled a witch, and with the ears of our hearts, we listened. We listened as each one of these women told her story and asked us to bear witness and then speak for her. We began on the first Saturday in June, stepping back to 900 BCE to bear witness to an almost unbearable story of Queen Jezebel. She was the last polytheistic queen of Israel, and she was thrown to wild dogs to be eaten by religious fanatics. We met Queen Jezebel through the voice of Allison Sharon, who herself is a descendant of a woman murdered as a witch in Salem, Massachusetts. If you want to meet Jezebel, I have a book for you. Jezebel, the untold story of the Bible's harlot queen. She's so not a harlot, Leslie Hazelton. So on the second Saturday, we actually got to dance at Mary Magdalene and Yeshua's wedding. How many people get to have that experience? And that happened to us, was brought to us through the voice of Sophie Strand, whose radical book on Mary Magdalene and Yeshua is coming out next year, 2023. Third Saturday, we crossed the channel to witness Queen Boudicca. Oh, how I love Queen Boudicca. You know who she is? She came this close to throwing the terrorist imperial army of Rome, the most powerful organization in the world at the time. She came this close to tossing them off her island. And we got to experience her screaming at the top of her lungs on her chariot, truth against the world, in Welsh. I cannot say it in Welsh. And finally, as June was ending, we traveled to France and met Dame Giraud. Dame Giraud was this wise, holy, generous, magnificent Cathar. And if you know any history whatsoever, you know what the Catholic Church did to the Cathars. Through Dame Giraud's incredible champion, Veronique Fleal, who lives in Cathar country, we got to not just hear Dame Giraud's story, but we prayed with her in Occitan, and we heard her final prayer, her final words to God as she was being murdered. Okay, after these 4 intense ceremonial pilgrim stops, we gathered on Zoom to talk about our experiences. Now, I hadn't originally planned this, but Joan had awakened me in the night with very clear instructions that we needed to meet one another. We needed to talk outside ceremonial space, and so she told me to set up 3 conversations on the final Sunday of June, July, and August. No agenda, no teaching, just this open forum to meet one another and speak and listen. So, of course, I had no idea. And I was nervous about the first one. Little did I know that in that first conversation, the sacred thread of 2022 would make itself known. Toward the end, I thought we were in the closing minutes of this first beautiful conversation. A young woman and mother shared how Queen Jezebel's story had awakened in her a deep previous lifetime memory of being strangled by a husband she loved, a husband who was totally caught up in the witch hunt patriarchal frenzy. With tears, she said, she realized she still holds that strangling feeling in this lifetime. Only this time, she said, I'm silencing myself. Even though I have a lovely life, wonderful children, and a loving husband, I keep myself small, silent, quiet, and no more. I listened in shock as I realized that this magnificent, beautiful woman was articulating perfectly the witch wound. We all carry this self-silencing after effect, generation of generation of generation of being silenced. It's epigenetic, it's ancestral, and it's very, very real. So as she was finishing speaking, Cameron Alteris mentioned, hey, my sister, Charla Knopfsinger, who is a classical singer and a voice coach, has developed a radically different teaching method that frees the natural voice because she had experienced how those old patriarchal breath through, support your breath, power through ways of singing actually harm the voice. Now, as Cameron is speaking, my body is shaking. My whole body was responding to something. This is always my clairsentient intuition speaking, screaming loudly to me, and I always listen. It was crystal clear in that moment that I had to create a prayer intensive in 2022 called Free Your Voice, and that Cameron and her sister, I've never even met her sister, they had to co-teach it with me. And Kahulahela, who had brought us Hana Ikapono in the pilgrimage, she absolutely has to have a special session to literally remove the epigenetic residues of being silenced. So immediately, I'm not even sure I had left the Zoom room and I was already sending Cameron and Lahela an email. We need to get started on Free Your Voice. So it's coming. Free Your Voice with Cameron Alteris, and you've got to watch the video on the landing page for this intensive to hear her story. This is a woman who has freed her voice at great, great price, at incredible strength. Charlotte Knopfsinger is going to teach us how to speak and sing to free our voice. You can tell I'm ready for that, right? So it opens Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, January 25th. The teaching sessions are at 7 o'clock Eastern, and there's always a UK watch party on Thursday at 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Europe. I'll be at all of those. I'll be running those. And then the Hana Ikapono special event and the closing ceremony. They're on weekends at 2 o'clock Eastern to make it possible for our friends in Europe to join us live. All of the details are on the landing page. So as I promised in that first note from the field in 2022, before I could invite all of you to come, I needed to invite my sisters and brothers in the witch pilgrimage and the lotus and the lily. And something astonishing happened. The young woman who birthed Free Your Voice responded to my invitation, I think in 10 minutes, with an email that reduced me to tears. And her letter reminded me of just how holy and healing these prayer intensives are. With her permission, I would like to read you Aubrey's email. Now, I know I'm going to get teary, so a sip. Okay, you read this, Hildemore, and then maybe I won't get so teary. Dearest, dearest Janet, my heart is so full of love right now. I am so grateful for that moment in June, for you, for Queen Jezebel, and since then I have shared the story with my husband. Actually, lots of stories about my and our past lives together. We have come a long way since last summer, and freeing my voice was a huge part of it. I am standing now in my sovereignty, taking leaps of faith and in love with us again. To change the course of patterns, we celebrated our 20th anniversary with our kids and parents in October. It was magical, and in those moments we forgave and rebirthed our new marriage. Freeing my voice helped my daughter to be open to freeing hers as well. She definitely has had witch past lives and has been silenced too. I learned that intonation and the choice of words coupled with intention and will can break patterns, protect against dark entities, clear space, and open the connection to our heart space. So thank you, sister. Thank you for opening a sacred space for others to heal. I am forever grateful. Much aloha to you. I'll see you in Free Your Voice. Aubrey. Well, if you received the written newsletter this past Sunday, you've already received this invitation, but some of you wait to hear Hildemore and I read them to you. So today, it's your turn to make the choice to free your voice. In this year, the year that we learn to listen to love, perhaps the single most important way to love ourselves is to begin to speak our truth. And so I invite you to please watch, and let me show it to you on screen share. I will show you what I'm talking about. You can pop over to my janetconner.com. The link is right below, and get all the information about Free Your Voice Prayer Intensive, an explanation of what it is, an introduction to some pretty thrilling feminist theory about it, and always a detailed explanation of what are we going to do. Well, we're going to start by freeing our physical voices, then our truth voice, then our ancestral voices, and finally our creative voice. And then there's all the rest of the details about our schedule, the time, and your opportunity to register. Hold on a second. I gotta get back to the letter. Bottom line is, this is going to be a very wild 2022. You know that, right? You're reading about the astrological portents. It just is. It just is. We are in this rebirthing canal where patriarchy, which has been clinging to power ever since they murdered Queen Jezebel, clinging to power, torturing people, slavery, indigenous, consumption, capitalism, white supremacy, all of this is not overnight falling to the ground, but it is slowly crumbling as more and more of us wake up, see what is, free our voices, and speak our truth into a world that doesn't want to hear it. But we are not afraid, right? As Joan of Arc taught us in the pilgrimage, perhaps you can see her famous quote in French, Je n'ai pas peur. I am not afraid. I am not afraid, because she says, I was born for this. I was born for this. She ended almost single-handedly the 100 Years' War. Came just like Boudicca got this close to getting Rome off her island. Our precious Joan came this close to getting England out of France. And it did come to pass, but it came to pass after they murdered her. So, truth is, you're born for this too. You were born to speak truth. And together in sacred community, I can, Hildemore can, you can, we all can. Let us free our voices and learn to speak with the tone and truth of love in 2022. I so invite you to join us. Hildemore will be there, right? Of course you'll be there. Let's all free our voices. The world is waiting. And Hildemore, well, she's going to nudge me to make sure that we don't wait a whole week to bring you the next Notes from the Field. I'll see you at janetconnor.com. I love you. Hildemore loves you too. Come and free your voice.